Well, hi, Cookie.
Hi, Cookie. Nice of the grandkids to let them in. Like father.
Like son.
Just two regular guys that love to distro hop.
Not too technical or even bleeding edge.
But functional and necessary for getting things done.
In Linux and open source.
Join us as we learn together on the Father
and Son podcast.
So, all right, this is the Father and Son podcast. I'm the father, if you can tell by how old I look. Obviously,
and I'm the son.
He's the son. So, we're both named James, so we didn't want to go that way. We may think of some other nicknames. I might call him Jamie just because he was Jamie for so long, but he is James. So, anyway, we may not include that in this. Who knows?
I'll be definitely calling him Dad.
Yeah. So why do we want to do a podcast? What do you think we were doing this for?
Just wanted to kind of share our knowledge, have a fun time together. We distro hop just because anyway. Might as well kind of share a little something that we learned with other people. We also enjoy Linux and sharing it with others. So
yeah, I know in the middle of last year, I seemed to put one Linux after another Linux after another Linux after another Linux. I had this little USB device that connected to my SSD cards, and I plug it in and do another distro and work through it, and then plug in another one. And that kind of started a while back. I mean, I don't know. I consider myself a rookie still, or new, but I remember, you had your live, your live USB devices, right? And I didn't like that because anything you did, you really wouldn't get to keep.
Yeah, it wasn't persistent.
Yeah, say more persistent. And I was like, well, you think you can take the USB and make it your persistent. I mean, yes, it'll be slower than something like a solid state drive, or definitely slower than an M.2 NVMe stuff. But anyway, so after a while, you tried this one and you go out there to DistroWatch. And you grab another one, you start loading those up. I was on vacation, and I kept buying USB drives. And, after about a year or so, I had, probably about 40 USB thumb drives,
Probably. He still does.
Yeah. So in the same way, in that same spirit, we kind of had to do this, except I was doing it with, basically your regular 2.5-inch, solid state drives.
Yeah.
And, just plug them in and go. And I even got a device in my computer now where I can switch between 4 different ones, and they come out the front. So if you ever decide, the ones I decide to keep, I would connect to the inside, the internals.
Right, yeah.
But then if you change your mind, you have to open up your case again and put it back in. And I don't mind opening up my case. I mean, maybe we should go there a little bit too. We don't have top of the line, bleeding edge anything,
No, we've never had top of the line bleeding edge anything. Maybe the closest that we ever came was a graphics card or two, and even then, I think they were at least already a year old. So that was probably the closest we ever been to bleeding edge.
And that was probably a while back.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that was like
I bought a used one recently. Just to have a upgrade, if you will. And I got it off of eBay, bought it used.
Yep.
I try not to spend too much money if I do spend money. This was probably $70 and brought it in. It's probably 6-7 years old already, but it's working for the function we're trying to do. And that's kind of one of the beauties of Linux as well.
Yes.
Is it does have this ability to go to a less sophisticated laptop or desktop, and when Apple, nothing wrong with Apple, Microsoft, not necessarily anything wrong with Microsoft. I mean, yes, we can get into all the proprietary and all that junk, but what I'm saying, the actual hardware and things like that, they will drop off their support of it.
Absolutely. They drop it off much quicker than Linux or any other operating system usually does, just to kind of help bring out, I guess, the competition, make sure that they, their contributors can also make money by getting everybody to buy a new hard drive or a new graphics card.
So we could look at it two ways. We could look at it, that way they don't have to support it, which costs money.
Right.
But they always want to be bringing in the newest stuff, like you said, to stay in competition. But also, if it's something else you can purchase, new. We see that in your toy industry, if you will. They're going to bring out a different color, a different size, a different whatever, different action figure because it makes money.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't want this older, thing. I want the newer. But sometimes you're in a financial situation where you can't.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about Linux is, it will allow you to continue using whatever hardware you have. Honestly, without skipping a beat for the most part.
Yeah, sometimes you don't even have to install a driver.
No, not anymore. There was the day that you did.
I remember using Ubuntu 9.10 way back when, and that you had to have a little more knowledge than you do nowadays. You had to be able to pull it from one area, put it in the right folder, set the right permissions in order for it to work just the way you needed it to work. Nowadays, you can go to their software center, and it does a lot of that already for you, which is awesome.
My two favorite hardwares, sarcastically, and kind of in some distros today still, is the Wi-Fi card.
Oh, jeez.
And the printer. Yes. And of course, Jamie will probably sit here and say, well, why do you even use a printer? Print. You don't need print anymore. Don't you have a tablet that you use? Why don't you just put it on the tablet, And yeah, that's all great and stuff, but, we still...
I still need to print here and there. Ink is too expensive for me.
So the way Jamie prints is he'll send me an email. Dad, can you print this for me? Sure, since I keep these printers going. Anyway, that's how we are on it. But needless to say, it allows me to put things together. And what's kind of funny is, and Jamie was noticing this earlier, it's like, wow, you got this one, and you got this different brand, you got this different brand. And some of them are cheaper brands.
Right.
I'm not too scared on that necessarily because if I'm using it just to do the distro looking at or
just playing around
or whatever. But you notice that as I start liking that distro, it goes up to the bigger SSD drive and probably more like a WD, something that I can't pronounce. Is not going to be the one I'm going to use if I want to keep it. Now, it just so happens the Linux that we're trying today is Void OS, and I am using Void right now. We're recording right here with OBS on Void off this computer, and that's actually happens to be on a cheaper drive, but it's a 1 terabyte drive. And yeah, there's a possibility that's going to tear up, and I'll probably move it to another one later on just so I can keep it if I like it. But that's the whole idea is we're trying to say, look, you don't have to have the top of the line. You don't have to spend the most money. Yes, it's nice to have some of these great fast things, but doesn't mean that if you have anything right now just to quit using it if that's all you have.
Right.
And Linux allows you to do that. There's even 32-bit stuff still being used out there.
There is, actually. There's quite a few that are still running on 32-bit. Some of them have dropped 32-bit support, but there's still plenty of OSs out there. Yeah. And even if you have, I want to say, a computer that has Windows 98, you might be able to still find a Linux out there that can run it.
Now, that's going to be a lot of work. I'll just put that out there right now. It is. If you can get a newer one than that, please do. But what I'm saying is you don't have to go out there and buy the latest MacBook Pro for $2,000 or your Dell, whatever, for, $1,000, $1,200 or whatever. It doesn't matter on that. I'm not trying to put down either one of those. Like I said, there's some quality stuff, and what they're trying to do, they do well. It's more to do with the fact that, we just can't go out and buy one every went around. So most of our stuff is hand-me-down. Can we make this work?
Frankenstein machines.
I know your desktop at home has DDR3. Mine happens to be DDR4. Yeah, that's right. I got one on you. But yeah, the newer stuff has the DDR5 coming out, so that's, it's just the way things work. We may be using, I guess you have like a a Series 3 one that we're using, or a Series 9, or, it's just...
Yeah, we're talking about CPU there.
Right. So your CPU, it comes up in different series as you go along, and difference between your Ryzen and Intel's. But I think Linux brings out the best of these things, because I think there's people out there that are still using this stuff, and they're contributing to the Linux operating system, the Linux forums, and the Linux community, as they call it.
Yeah, which is one of the things that I like the most about Linux is simply the community behind it.
Yeah.
Whenever you're running into an issue, somebody else out there has either already ran into that issue, solved it, and is sharing it with you, or is willing to help you find where the problem is and help you correct it as best you can.
And most of them are nice enough.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%.
I'm not saying not all of them, okay? There are. We'll get back into this talking about, why Linux and being, you're not bored or anything like that, because you keep changing, you can change the next one. And each operating system seems to have its special, unique tweak.
Yeah. Unique tweak to it.
Yeah.
Voids happens to be its run it.
Yeah.
Instead of using init.
Yeah.
I know this is getting kind of technical.
And we'll get into it and we'll talk about it a
it.
little bit. We try not to be too technical, but we'll try to explain what that is here in a minute. Which probably Jamie will have to explain it, because
I don't know about that.
I'm not the technical. Anyway, there's some things that are in a black box, and I'm a scientist too. I've held down several different jobs over my life, but as a scientist, we don't like black boxes. We like to dig in, see what's there and stuff. But anyway, what's your daily driver?
Right now, my daily driver happens to be Manjaro.
Okay.
Manjaro OS.
And that's a fork off the Arch Linux, right?
Correct. This fork off of Arch Linux. It's made to be a little bit easier, it's a little bit simpler, not as necessary to compile by yourself.
Yeah.
Certain projects, which is awesome. And the community is quite fantastic out there, too. So
yeah. And you do a lot more of the community stuff than I get a chance to. I'll go out there and, go research from web page to web page. And, just an Arch story for you. We used to have these magazines, and we still do. Linux Format, Linux Magazine, Linux,
Yeah.
I mean, they got Raspberry Pi stuff and all that stuff.
PC Magazine.
Yeah. Anyway, so you grab it and stuff like that, and they would have like a couple distros in there, right? on a DVD.
Those. Yeah.
So you grab that, and I was like, hey, this one has Arch. And so, man, I got it together, and I'm following line by line what to put in the terminal. And the terminal's where you're entering in your code, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's another beautiful thing about Linux. I mean, both...
If you remember DOS, this is exactly what it is.
It looks like DOS. It kind of feels a little bit like DOS. But, and you're probably not old enough for DOS, but some of us are. Anyway, neither here nor there. As you start working through that, and keep in mind that actually both your Macs and your Windows do have this ability as well.
Yes.
And so I did everything, got it all up, ran it through them line to line, not knowing exactly what that meant to do, but I did it anyway, right? And it came up, supposedly it was supposed to be Arch. And I'm looking at a prompt, thinking that I didn't do it the right way. Went back, loaded up another distro, went on to something else. Well, I did do it the right way. It's just Arch comes up to this blank prompt, and now you start doing things like loading up your desktop and everything else. So, yes, each one of these Linuxes have different levels of learning and different levels of abilities and different levels of whatever, and different functions sometimes.
Absolutely, yes.
So that's my Arch story for you. But mine daily driver right now, for the most part, is going to be Debian. And the reason why I'm on Debian is, one, it's not your grandfather's software. Because Debian back in the day used to be pretty hard to do.
Oh, yeah. But it's still one of the robust ones out there.
It has a lot. So now Debian, the reason I went with that is, everybody goes with Arch and some of these other stuff. Don't get me wrong. I like Arch. I have a couple of them with Arch on it right now, too, which is a learning experience for me. But it's more to do with the fact I don't have the leading breaking edge hardware to worry about getting a driver for. I don't have any of that stuff. So why put yourself through all those possible problems of keeping that up as you update when you already have older materials, older hardware to work with, and then you can just grab a an already proven, and of course Debian's famous for this. I mean, I'm on Debian 12. You might get through 12 upgrades in a year's time with Arch. I don't know, some of these other ones.
You can get through 2 upgrades
by the end of the week.
End of the week, end of the day occasionally, because they're doing some of the daily, what they call nightly builds or something like that, which is in and of itself great. They call it bleeding edge, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah. You're getting the top of the line, ready to go, just fresh off the press with all its bugs, if any.
Yeah, and we it's not to say that Linux Arch doesn't have its place too, because not only about the leading edge and hardware in that community, but even through that community, you can go out there and figure out how to do something and go back to the Linux you're using.
Correct. Yeah.
So to get the key on how to fix this, it's out there because that community is just so big. And, that blog goes so detailed and thorough and just, so.
But also that they start from the scratch. So they've got a little bit more on the how-tos, a little more on the knowing what commands are going to be necessary in order to see what you need to see to, proceed on.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, we'll talk about this more each time we get into some other podcasts. Leave us some material for our second and third, and then we'll probably be dry and not know what to do after that. So anyway, but we wanted to grab a Linux. We thought, hey, this would be a great thing. Let's do a distro. Let's review it for people. Try to do it for the normal guy, just a regular guy. Not too much detail, not too much technology, not too much technical stuff, but it's hard not to do at least some of that in some cases. So we picked Void. We never heard of Void. I never used Void. I pulled that up, and it has a target there. It's like, that's kind of cool, a target thing and stuff like that. And so it's all new, cold turkey on it. So let's talk a little bit about the history of it, and then we'll get into our review of it. So Void Linux is a free and open source operating system like all these other Linuxes are, maybe with the exception of RHEL or Red Hat, something like that.
Red Hat, yep. Those are your enterprise ones, though, usually.
Yeah. It was first released in, as far as we can tell, 2008. Juan Romero Pardines, and I think his nickname was the Extreme. It's not spelt like extreme, but it's still extreme. And he seemed to have the brain behind this to start with. I mean, obviously he had the brain because he was probably the only one to start with on this, going through it. And it's just a general purpose operating system. And just like Linux or Debian or Arch, these other ones, it's not built on Debian. It's not built on Arch.
Right.
So it's itself. So not a fork.
Which is one of the cool things about Void to begin with, too, is that it's its own thing.
Right.
It's not a fork off of any other operating system out there. Usually when you're getting into, say, Linux Mint or something like that, is based off Ubuntu or based off Debian or based off Arch.
And a lot of them are based off of Debian.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are based off of Arch. And those kind of seem to be the two major ones back there. But this is not based off anything. Pardines, he had I want to say he was part of a BSD development beforehand. And he had this XBPS package manager system he wanted to test out. Now, XBPS is what they still use, and it's Extreme Binary Package System, XBPS. So just like your APT or apt in Debian or in Arch, it's Pac-Man, something like that.
PacMac, yep.
It's PacMac, something like that. So he wanted to test that out, so he built an operating system around his Pac-Man machines. So it's like, that sounds almost backwards. I think when you put together the operating system and then drop the package manager in there. But anyway, that's what he wanted to do. So he put that together and started building this. One of the key features that Void Linux uses Runit, which you mentioned earlier, as its init system. Runit is simply simple and efficient, and it replaces the traditional one that we have out there, which is like systemmd.
Yeah, systemmd, inits.
Systemd, something like that. That other Linux distributions has. So that's one of the unique things. I think it did have systemmd way back when, but now it's on Runit.
Right.
And so that's a little bit different. So that's what your Runit is, or
initialization,
your
or starting.
Starting up. It starts from the beginning. It goes all the way to when you shut it down.
Yep.
Yeah. So very important part of operating systems anyway is the run its or the inits, and his is run it that he started using. So it's kind of cool. Another notable feature about Void Linux is it uses muscle as well. I guess you have a dual choice there. You don't necessarily have to use the muscle
Right.
LIBC, but it's a lightweight alternative to the more commonly used GNU. Did I say that right?
They usually say new.
New, you want to call it
the
GNU.
G's sound-
So you can
sound
call
like-
it GNOME, but you can't call it. Which I always call it just GNOME.
It's just gnome. I don't know who in the world calls it gnome.
Anyway, if you see a G in front of these things, it's usually silent, but it's not always silent. So if someone says GNU,
They're still talking about
new. About GNOME, they're still talking about GNOME, which anyway, that's for anyone else. It's interesting.
This community can be fun.
Yeah. Void Linux reduces the memory footprint that's being used to improve the overall performance. It also has its a Void Package Repository, VPR. Contains a wide range of software packages. Anyway, and next VPS is, of course, this package manager we said earlier. Over the years, Void Linux gained dedicated and passionate users and focused on simplicity, minimalism, performance, and that's how its people became attracted. I know one of the times they started inviting people to be a part of it later on.
Right.
And I know that Pardine stepped out of it after a while, after several years. But man, the incredible stuff that he was putting out there, I was just like by himself for the most part. I mean, I'm sure he had people around her, but he was kind of more the lead.
Right.
But I mean, if you read through their history, which you can on Void Linux website, that they even things like Raspberry Pi and some of these other stuff that they put together, it'd almost be like by the end of the week or the next day or something like that, which is just incredible because even when they started putting people on, they didn't have a huge group of people putting together this package,
Right.
this
It was
operating
just
system.
very small group, and which is awesome. I think now it's bigger, but it's still not as major as some of the other ones like Fedora or Ubuntu are probably going to have.
Yeah, you just Mint MX and all these other ones that's out there. But with that said, it's still a very useful. It works hard. I mean, it works well, and it's just interesting. The Void Linux community is actively involved in development and maintenance of its operating system, ensuring that it remains up to date and responsive to user needs. So that's another thing that comes up is, obviously Debian's more one of the ones, let's get a final working product before we have it out there, tested, back and forth, all the hardware and stuff. But unlike that, Arch is on the other end of that, right?
Sometimes. Yeah, they release the stuff first and then allowing you guys to find the bugs and help them build it out too. But it's not always the case. They do have some testing that they do behind the scenes, but is that extensive as Void or as extensive as Debian? Probably not.
So Void's going to be, I guess, what we consider a rolling Linux.
Right.
Arch is one of the ones that considered rolling too, but even Arch now has a more permanent one. So you have two different versions of it that you can load up. And many of the operating systems are doing that now. We know that like SUSE, it has their Tumbleweed, which is their rolling one, and then they have their more permanent one, and just,
Yeah.
So it's just most Linuxes are starting to do that. Fedora is kind of a both, I guess, in the one package. It does have, it keeps getting updated quite often, kind of like a rolling release, but most people could call it more of a permanent type thing. But it definitely has been replaced or redone multiple times compared to like other, like Debian and some of the other ones that have been done. But Void is more of a rolling release type form. Their website is voidlinux.org. They have a wiki out there as well, wiki.voidlinux.org. Their GitHub repository is, believe it or not, github.com/void-linux. And it's all in there. It's really good stuff. And
we'll have it in the comments here too.
Yeah, absolutely. So from that said, to what we have now, I mean, I like some of the things that went on. We were sharing notes back and forth, me and Jamie, and what we did is they had an April Fool's Day thing that they released, on their news. Right. So they started doing news, which was important because really they didn't really put anything out. So Extreme wasn't really talking about himself or what he was doing much.
Right.
And when they started putting stuff out there in news, then people started developing interest in it. Once you start developing interest in it, they can help plug in and help debug and other stuff going on.
Correct.
And eventually they opened up the doors for several people to come in and be a part of it. And yeah, it's under different groups now, and now it's open for everybody and stuff to use, and that's a pretty thing about it too. But it was funny because one of them, they were saying, well, it's dead. We're not going to do it anymore. And what they suggested, you go out there and I think it was like instead of Debian, it was a Beberin or Beberin, Justin Bieber. So Bieberin. Linux.
Even worse.
So they did that. There's one where they did like a advent calendar type thing. Advent, each day before Christmas they're releasing a new thing, kind of a new tweak, and it was kind of cool, or a new tip. There was one where they released a Christmas carol, if you will, except it was written for Linux. So go out there and look at the stuff. It's really great. Some fun stuff, a little humorous stuff going on. But their history is kind of interesting, and it's neat to work with. So anyway, with all that said, what's your review of it, Jamie?
I actually really did enjoy it. The one that I have, I don't really have it against it. It's just I like convenience over functionality occasionally, which is the Software Center. I prefer to kind of have a graphic user interface, but So
you're saying it doesn't have a graphics user's interface?
Well, I didn't say that. It definitely does.
It does not. I guess you can load one.
Well, no. But you have a graphics user interface where you can interact with your desktop. You can open up your Word documents and whatnot. But as far as your software being installed, you're going to be doing this.
So the package manager is not
Yeah.
like Discover or some of the other stuff that you see out there.
Correct. Which, but it's smooth. It runs very quick. It boots up surprisingly fast. The only other one that I've seen boot up almost near as quickly as that is Chrome OS or something related to that. The installer was another interesting thing, and actually installing the operating system. I have, since pretty much using Linux, they've always been a graphics user interface where you're actually seeing things, you're choosing what driver and what have you by mouse clicks. This one is all through your terminal. You're going to have to use your arrow keys and other things. But what they did have is they have a wonderful documentation set that helps you go through that installation process pretty smoothly.
So it's interesting, that it seems like most of the people that I hear talking about or putting it together and stuff like that, they'll put down the documentation in place. And I thought, man, it had a great documentation.
It did. I really did.
More details than most of the Linuxes I work with. But the next words out of their mouth would be the AUR out there on Arch. And it's like, okay, well, Arch has more than anyone else, period.
It's been here longer,
it's like, too. Okay, this car is fast, but it's not as fast as a Maserati or a Lamborghini. It's like, so you go to the top, the one that has the most, and you're comparing it to that. But no, I think if it didn't give you the exact way of doing it, it gave you enough information where you can figure out how to do it.
Absolutely. And for a tactile, visual kind of guy, that was beautiful. Right. I was like, all right, this makes way more sense. I don't know why I missed this step. And in the place that I work, I'm actually one of the trainers and quality and assurance areas. One of the things that we actually push into our trainees is reading is a critical skill. Absolutely. 100%. Anything you're doing, reading is critical. Don't skip steps. Don't look over something. Don't skim. Read it start to finish, and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. And it's a learning process. So, we'll probably both agree on this. This is not your jump out of the box first time in Linux distro. Because it's not, if you're just coming over from Windows or Mac.
Yeah, you're going to be a little far off.
It's going to be lost. But it did remind me a lot, of course, I started way back in the day, and like I said, I had a whole hiatus where I just stopped and not do anything Linux-wise. But mine wasn't even OpenSUSE back then; it was SUSE, SUSE, and it was like 9 point something at that time.
9.3, because I still have your novel thing.
Order. Anyway, so it reminded me of that, the installation process.
Right.
So I wasn't fearful of it at all. I thought, I did have to go to their webpage and read through.
Yes.
I mean, even when you load the ISO to start with, your live system here, it's like, all right, well, where is the installation icon? Usually you have it right here.
Icon. I remember that.
So you have to go into terminal, and you have to log in as root, which root will be the overall administrator, if you will. And then you type in, I think it was void install or something like that. Void
something
Linux
like
install. And it's right there in the front. So right out of the box, it's a little bit different than what you might be used to if you loaded up Mint or Ubuntu or some of these other ones that are going to take you and walk you through it.
Yeah, they give some operating systems are going to hold your hand through installation and through some of the software installs or first thing setups. Linux Mint is one of those that are famous for doing that for you.
Yeah, and it's going to have a desktop. It either comes out just plain,
right,
plain Jane, as you will, or it came in with, I think it was a XFCE, right?
Correct.
And now the XFCE is a kind of a minimal type desktop, and I was using that for a while, and that works out good. It's that one that has a little mouse on it.
Yeah, that's cute.
If you ever seen that, and it has, I want to say Plank, because it's it has a bar at the bottom to launch some of your apps from if you want to, and I think it's Plank. Anyway, but it's very minimum. So it has a browser, not multiple browsers. No one uses multiple browsers, right? We don't have like.
Well, I have 10. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't have like Thorium and Mercury and Brave and all these things. Now I guess some of them are repeating each other, but
I'm using Vivaldi, Firefox, and at work I have to use Chrome or Edge Chromium.
There's some things you have to use a Chromium or Chromium base because whatever that web development is, they're forcing you to do that. With that said, sometimes at work you have to use a Windows or a Mac or whatever you're using there, and that's okay too. We're not trying to put down anybody necessarily.
But
Linux really allows you to open some stuff up. But it has Thunar, I guess, is their file system. File manager, actually. I think its default web browser is Firefox, which isn't bad. Window manager, XF, WM4. Let's see, plain text editor.
Mousepad or LeafPad.
Mousepad, I think is what this one is. So you kind of get used to the terminal to start with. And that's, like you said earlier, that was the first thing on the box. It was kind of, okay, I got to actually go out to Void. Like I said, I never used it before, to even find out how I get the package manager.
So you realize that
what do
you have the package manager.
So it's got to be terminal now. Okay, so I'm going to do a terminal, and I'm going to load it up and everything like that. But honestly, once I found that and started working on it, I really did not miss my package manager, my graphical package manager, like Discover or something like that.
When you get to knowing the package names or the way the installation goes, pretty much the package manager, the only thing that's good about it from there is it provides a little bit of information on it, beforehand, and community rating occasionally. But that's not to say that you can't go out on the website and find the application that you're looking for. Say LibreOffice, they have a website out there. They've got all kinds of information on it, their own community forum too. But the install is simply something like XBC install LibreOffice, and it'll install pretty much instantly. Well, maybe not instantly, but still, it's easy, And if I go to Arch, I just have to know how to install using their terminal, and I can type in pretty much the exact same thing for the name of the package, and it will install in there.
Almost.
Yeah.
That is one of the problems with Linux is the packages may have a little bit different naming system.
Just slightly.
One may have a dash in it. One may have an underscore in it. One may not. One may add this. One may have browser on it, and that one did not. So you got to be careful with that, of course. Don't think it's not part of their package system just go check to see. Some of them do have ability to pull up.
Right.
Do you have information about this? And inside of the terminal, it will give you information which might include, they're naming this, I don't know, for instance, like maybe Thorium browser or something like that. But it just, you have to look at that, look it up. I did use Flatpak.
Flatpak is one of the nicer things too.
So what I would do is I'd try to find out whether or not it was inside of Void to start with. If it was in Void, I went ahead and loaded it in Void. Just installed it.
Run a little bit faster.
So we did that. But then if I couldn't, then I'd pull up my Flatpak or to see what was there, and it loads pretty good, easy on that stuff too. So really, you're not going to be out of any app that you're used to using if you use Linux before, or if you want to go out there and explore some of the other stuff. I will say that Void kind of, the way they set it up from the beginning, it sounds like, if they have an app that's doing that function, that's it. You have that one app that does that one function. You don't have to go shop around for anything else, and that's all. They're not going to provide all these other apps. 14 different browsers, 30 different editors.
But that's part of the minimalistic idea.
Correct, and that's the other thing about it is you notice it's fast. It's still fast.
Yeah.
The only thing I think is close to that is when I loaded Arch. But at the point that I loaded Void, I didn't have Arch yet. I was working on Arch at that time. But yeah, it is. Even inside the games, like Steam. Yes, I have Steam on it, and I play games on it too. It did have more frames per second than, say, some of my other operating systems that I worked with in the past.
Right.
And it's just because it doesn't have this extra package,
or overhead,
stuff working in the background.
That's another thing. They call, whenever you get like a new Windows device, they come usually with pre-installed applications, which is great. Sometimes they're fantastic, sometimes they're just trials. They call it bloatware. And Linux is a little more free of that, but if you go looking into Ubuntu or something else like that, there's
Windows.
Yeah. There is a definite amount of bloatware. You don't necessarily need the app ports if you're not looking for logs at all. You don't need it to tell you that, hey, this one didn't work. Do you want to relaunch it, or you want to put a log in it? Not necessarily. Or you can reduce the level of it so that it doesn't get as much detail, which is going to make it a little bit faster. You don't need all 300 packages come with it. You can pare it down. Void is going on the opposite end of that and kind of saying, okay, we just need this one. Right. We got it. We're good.
Right. And it's the way they do it, it's kind of interesting, but that's probably the difference between someone trying to first start off with Linux from Windows or Mac or some of the other stuff compared to one that's been working on it for a while, because after a while you start just loading the stuff you need.
Yeah.
In fact, you usually know the packages that you want it to load, and you load up those same ones no matter what operating system you're using. In fact, sometimes you'll go back to your Windows at work or wherever, or your Mac, and try to load them up.
Or look for them. Man, I have...
At least look for them, right?
Yeah, no, I've gone to my work device, and it's like, and that's Windows. Windows 11 right now, actually. Yeah. And there are still points where I'm like, man, I wish I had this package. One in particular, so Windows 11, I have not figured out for the life of me how to move the taskbar from the bottom to the top.
You kind of used to that on some stuff.
And it's just, it's something really small, but everything else, it made it real easy for me to find everything.
Windows just now moved it to the center of the bottom, so it's more of an active area when you're working with your mouse and your touchpads and stuff. They finally got that memo.
And they got their memo for the workspaces, so if you're stuck to one screen.
Workspaces.
Yeah.
And that's another thing here is you load up in what was it, XFCE, these acronyms or these these initials for everything is crazy on this particular Linux. But I'm used to more like a Plasma KDE type desktop, right?
Absolutely.
So I went ahead and loaded it again, just straight to the prompt, and then I went through and loaded up Plasma Desktop and a KDE Plasma, and that did fine, except for one thing. I've used Proton Mail, and to use Proton Mail, they have when they're trying to encrypt stuff, And
Proton Bridge.
Yeah, they use Proton Bridge. Well, Proton Bridge is going to use some type of key ring or key system.
Correct.
So KDE has wallet. What's the other one? GNOME has their
GNOME keyring.
GNOME keyring, right?
It's called.
So I loaded both those up. Neither one of them worked for this. It would not trigger it the right way. It was working just fine when I was doing it in the XFCE. So eventually, what I did is I went back to my XFCE and then reinstalled the desktop on that for KDE, and that's what I've been using ever since. It's been fine. I was on your XFCE for several weeks, and then I switched over to the KDE Plasma, which we're using today. And I was telling him, over on your Plasma, I use caffeine, so it would keep things from closing down. And now I have it over here. I don't need it in KDE because you just do it in power management and just click on that little box. But it's working fine. It does load up. Sorry. Both the wallet from KDE and the ring from your GNOME. Both. So it's kind of like, all right.
So, funny story about that. I am going to get just a slightly bit technical here, but promise you we can explain it at a later date that's not as technical as you might think. The other day, I had reinstalled Manjaro and was trying to split my partition from one hard drive, like my home folder, from actually the main hard drive to another one. And what I forgot about is that I had a previous operating system do the exact same thing. And so whenever I moved it over to that, the home folder was still on there from the old one. So when I booted it up next, I had two
home folders?
No, not two home folders. That was okay. I had two different key rings popping up.
That doesn't cause problems at all.
No. What's really funny about that is it was two different passwords because I had it from the last operating system and then I had the one from this operating system.
Yeah.
For those of you who are pretty new to Linux, one of the most famous or most robust printer driver or printer management systems in Linux is called Cups. It's also, you use it through the web browser. You access it through an IP address that's usually your local machine's IP address and a certain port, and you can set up and adjust your printers from there. It's not the easiest, but there are plenty of people out there in the community that have already set up plenty of tutorials on how to do so. Other places use different ones, like my Manjaro has Manjaro printing. It's probably using Cups on the back end. However, it's providing you a graphics utility to be able to configure it on something you're more used to whenever you're looking at Windows or Mac, whenever you're hooking up your printer there.
All right, so we were talking a little bit about printers, and to install the printer, and you have to do this for some of the other stuff depending on what you're doing, but to get a service to work, what we have to do is go ahead and use, in Void Linux, it's, what is it on that? You go to, like systemctl, enable, right, dash cups, or new cups, or now cups. And so that's but usually you have to use like what do we usually use, like config printer or something like that, or sudo systemctl enable dash now cups. That's what I did for the correct one here. But now if you're using that in another system, usually it's like ln-s /cups d, and then over to the var service. So it's just a matter of,
and that's just that's a lot of tech speak for linking a file that's in a different area to a new folder where it's going to pick it up.
One of the problems I was having before with the other distros, including Windows, your mom obviously uses Windows here in the house and stuff, but when you go to print, the printer wouldn't wake up.
Yeah, that's
the printer
right.
I had, right? So, but when I fixed it on Void and put that, which they did have that information in the Void notes,
Absolutely.
and put in the sudo system ctl enable -- now cups, I didn't have that problem anymore. So then I went back to my some other things like maybe the Arch and maybe my Debian, and did that with their version of that. And lo and behold, the only place in this house that's having problems with it now is Windows. Now, granted, it could be just the fact that it's this printer that I'm using.
Correct.
Because I know there's HPs and some other stuff that work well with Linux right out of the box. But so that's one of the things I did learn from Void. How would you rate this one?
This one? All right, rating on a scale of what? Are we looking at usability
We're going to have to develop that if you want to divide it to, maybe a usability.
Usability for a new person, I'd probably say it's about 5.
So
the reason I say that is because of the clear documentation.
Okay, so let's clarify that a little bit then. If we're going to take a new user friendly, and you're going from what, 1 to 10?
1 to 10.
You're going to give it a 5.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll probably give it closer to maybe a 3. And it's a little bit harder because all the terminal stuff you're going to have to do.
Right.
And if you've never done anything like that before, and if you're using Windows, you never have probably. Some of us that do IT stuff, we may have used
right.
some of those areas. Run.
It can be a little.
Some of the other stuff, but
it can be daunting, but the documentation is there.
All right. What about stability?
Stability, I would say that was right up in the 9-10 area.
9-10 easily. I had no problems with it.
Never.
It's still running just fine. We're using it right now. I just, it's very stable. Okay, what would be another area that we could look at? Would it be your daily driver? Could you use it as your daily driver? Are you using it as your daily driver?
Could I use it as my daily driver? Yes. Am I using it? No.
Yeah. I open it up and use it quite often, but yeah, my daily driver is still going to be Debian or Arch at the moment, but I've loaded up into Void just fine.
Yeah.
No problem whatsoever. And I would not be scared to use it as my daily driver for sure.
Yeah.
I found everything that I need to find on it so far. And like I said, they keep it up to date. It's just like a rolling release in the long run, the way they work it. Sometimes you'll look on there and they'll have a newer version of an app or whatever compared to even Arch, which is incredible, like I said, because I'm absolutely sure that Void Linux has a lot smaller group working on Void than Arch has working on their operating system. So, but it's not a comparison thing, anything like that. I mean, Arch is tough to learn for first party too, and we're still learning on that just to challenge ourselves. But there's operating systems that are easier to install. Easier
to run. And
Linux Mint, for instance. Ubuntu's pretty easy to do nowadays. Yep. Some of the other ones.
If you're wanting a Windows-like feel, you're probably going to look at Linux Mint. It's the most close. And if you're looking for a Mac, you can do, there's an Elementary OS out there.
OS will do kind of stuff, and that's really just because of the desktops that they come in as default.
Right.
I think it's Cinnamon that's going to give you the kind of the Windows look to it.
Cinnamon Mate, yeah.
Yeah, Mate will give you that type of feel to it. So if you're used to that type of opening up your system and the file system and where all the menus are, but keep in mind, for most Linuxes, you can change it if you need to.
It's customizable. You can. We talk about. Maybe we haven't actually touched base on this, but open source. That means you can go and look literally at the source code. We're talking about what the programmer built into it, or what they typed into this program to make it launch or do the things that it does. You, as the user of an open source application or operating system, have the right to go and look at that. Whereas in Windows or Mac, it's closed source, and we also call it proprietary, meaning that only privileged users get to go and see that, such as somebody who works for Windows, or somebody who works for Mac, or who works for NVIDIA, XYZ location. But yeah, I mean, because it's open source, you can go and customize it to just about anything that you want. You can move your taskbar. If you wanted your taskbar in the middle of your screen for whatever reason, you could move it to the middle of your screen and it would stay there. Now, most people don't. They usually top, bottom, left, right. But If you were really wanting to, there's nothing saying that you couldn't do that, as long as you have the know-how or somebody helps guide you in that direction.
Yeah. It is, we probably need to always put out there too that people start talking about free. It's free, it's free, it's free.
Yeah.
It's free to be able to bring in the code and stuff like that to look at and work with. And yes, you can load it up and try it out usually without any cost, but someone's working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if the money they raise will pay for how much work they put in it. I don't think it would.
I think it depends on
sometimes it
where.
it helps them pay for hardware or some other stuff to work on. It might buy them a cup of coffee every once in a while, but do consider that. I mean, do consider, if you like a product there, donate to it.
Absolutely. I mean, and they are, as we said, free, but there's somebody or some person out there that is working on this in the back end.
Correct.
Your time is valuable to you. Their time is valuable to them as well. And because it's in the, what do they call it? The GNU licensing, which means that they can't make a profit off of it, based on that, then they're going to have to make their money off of donations and sometimes it's just enough to keep the power on, if you will, or as my dad said, buy them a cup of coffee, which is fantastic. There's actually a website called Buy Me a Cup of Coffee, almost exactly like that. And it's literally those programmers out there, setting up their little page for it, asking you guys to just buy me a cup of coffee. It's $5, it's $3, it's $6. And every little bit counts. It's not going to, we're not expecting, they're probably not expecting somebody to donate $10,000, just to use their product or anything of that nature, but it's still going to help them out. And when they have that money, it makes it easier for them to roll out things quicker, update better, keep it more stable, and other things of that nature too.
Right. It does help them out a little bit here and there. And, I know people get burned out in some of these situations and things like that, but this will help somewhat continue the process going. So I think it moves us forward, not just Linux, but, just anything. Even talking about cups and stuff like that, as a guy that was trying to set up his printer, and I want to say that Apple picked him up, to start doing their printer stuff for him, things, but these guys that start working this, it's just a desire to make it better. I mean, a drive. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't get paid for it, because, hobbies get expensive.
Or time gets expensive.
Time gets expensive. But if you can, donate to them, help them out, go to their Patreon places or however they do it, Bitcoin, whatever they do, and help them out with the system. I mean, I know I use Thunderbird on a lot of stuff for my email. I try to give it to Thunderbird, because I know, if I did Outlook or some of these other stuff, it cost me money. But, this is the one I like to use, and I even use it over on some of my work devices, and so I like to donate to them. But I know that's one of the ones I use. There's several others that we try to help out from time to time. And it's not like I give them a ton of money. I wish I could. Like you wish you had a newer computer too, but it is what it is. But at least, let them know that you like their product. One, always, let them know that it's working great. And two, see if you can donate to them from time to time. All right. I was trying to see if there's anything else we need to cover here.
I think that's just about it.
Almost there, yeah.
You wanted to...
Yeah.
What kind of tip do you have?
Oh, okay. Let's see. A tip for just Void?
Tip for Void or in general, yeah.
Well, you have yours, so go ahead and tell me yours, because I didn't want to take that one.
Honestly, read the documentation. Sorry.
Yeah. So Void has
a
great,
yeah,
documentation out there on their website. So use that.
Absolutely. Go there first, because they're the ones who made it. They're going to know how their programs work. It's not to say that the community won't be able to help you, but documentation is there for a reason. So go and look at it.
Mine probably be more like to do with the flat pack, flat hub stuff. Even if I was going to load up something inside of Void Linux, I kind of went out to their site to make sure I got the name there, so at least I was looking in the right place, and they might have called it something else, but then I did their search feature to find out what their version of that package was or their app. So yeah, don't give up. You could probably still get that app loaded on these things, but
definitely.
But yeah, their website is really helpful, and I one of the better ones, I think, as far as them. Okay, I like to finish this off with a verse. Several jobs, here. One of them is I get to be a minister at church, and that's where I actually do my IT stuff too, or a lot of my IT stuff. But the verse...
And I work for a faith-based organization too.
Yeah.
Providence or Covenant Health Systems.
As everybody clicks off right now, No, we're not going to be, too hard on anything like that. But we're just saying, the verse I want to do here was in Hebrews 13. And it's Hebrews 13:16. It says, "Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices is pleasing to the Lord." So that's what Linux kind of reminds me of, is there's a lot of people that are sharing their knowledge, sharing their abilities, even some of these people doing Void and stuff like that, incredible minds, incredible abilities, and then they're out there sharing it with others, allowing others to work with it, other people to use it. And that's one of the beauties to think about Linux is, you can probably have a few jerks out there and stuff like that, but for the most part, people are there helping each other. Just like this right now, we're just hoping that this might help someone. It may not. We don't know. We're just trying to...
we're just having a little bit of fun.
Yeah,
either way.
mainly it's pushing us further to get better.
Yeah.
Or else you get kind of caught in a plateau and you don't go any farther. We don't want to get caught on a plateau. We want to keep pushing ourselves farther. The more you push yourself, the more you'll learn. And we kind of enjoy doing it together and having fun and calling each other. And have you ever ran into this before? I just want people to know that that's what we're here to do, and that's what Linux seems to do, for the most part. And, like I said, there are some that go out there and do some more of the money making. And if you can make money with it, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And they have the right to be able to do that, So,
absolutely.
So that's kind of one of those interesting things, and we're not going to be sitting here downing too many things. Yeah, protect your security, obviously, protect your identity, obviously. But there's other things out there that, let's learn from each other and make this even better product than it was before.
Absolutely. And looking forward to our next little project, we had a few suggestions, and do we want to go in order?
Hang on, let me see what the order was, because...
Well, the first one you suggested was CachyOS.
Yeah, I don't know much about that. That's kind of what made
that's
it
the point,
yeah.
And I have never touched it either.
And
so
you had, I guess I had Sparky.
You had both.
Yeah. But you had some other ones down here, Salix and Arco. Well, that was me.
Acro or
Acro, and
yeah,
that's
Arco,
kind of an
yeah.
Arch-based one, I believe.
It is. So is Archman.
But pick one.
I think let's go with Cachy, and then we can see about
All right.
Changing it from Arch to something else.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. That's all we have. Like Father, like Son, Linux review. Hopefully we'll get this stuff going pretty good, and maybe there'll be more than just one out there.
Maybe.
Hopefully there'll be a 2 and a 3, and we'll let you know when we get a regular schedule going. We're trying to do this about every 30 days. But maybe we can make a little bit more frequently than that, or maybe in between we can do other stuff besides the Linux, because we want to give each operating system at least its right amount of time. Keep it up, keep trying. Don't give up when you're coming over from a Mac or a Windows the first time. It's a learning curve, but it's well worth it.
It is definitely. I mean, even if you just want to play around with it, it's fun to do. It definitely gets you away from the big names, Mac and Windows, and you get a chance to just kind of see how the other parts of the world kind of work, because a lot of the Linux is actually out in the third world countries more frequently than here in the States, but that doesn't mean you can't use them.
And just like the sharing verse we were talking about, I think there's some people that, because they have Linux, they can use stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
They wouldn't be able to do it with the Windows or Macs, things like that stuff. So Linux is one of the things that they can use, and they can use it, right out of the box, right off the download, right off a thumb drive passed from one person to another. What do they call that? Your tennis shoe drive, something like that.
They even have there are some operating systems out there called one's Endless OS. They have programs literally set out to go to third world countries with their operating system and a computer that they've already preset to give them out for education purposes for people in elementary school all the way up into high school, even colleges out that way. So that's really cool. I mean,
yeah. And if there's any operating system or something like that you want us to try, just let us know.
Yeah.
We'll try.
Sorry, I'm not going to try Hannah Montana Linux.
No.
Sorry about that.
Or Bebian or whatever it is, Bieberin. But go out and read that stuff. It's kind of hilarious and fun, and I'm glad they have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all we have. Goodbye, guys. Take care until the next time.
Have a good time.
Take care. Bye-bye.